everyone. I'm Michelle.
I'm Jim.
We're from A Teak of Your Own. And welcome to another Motivational Monday.
Let's get motivated.
Woohoo! Yay! Yay! I'm excited. We have a guest this week, one of my friends from Polka Dot Powerhouse. And ladies, if you are out there and you've seen me post stuff about Polka Dot Powerhouse, you've seen me mention it and stuff on Facebook and on LinkedIn. If you're even the least bit curious, let me know. I'll send you a link and you can find out all about it. But having said that, one of the cool people that I've met there, one of the cool women who are part of Polka Dot is Dr. Serena Goldstein. And she is with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Serena Goldstein. I am coming to you live from San Francisco, as you could literally see the sun starting to come up. And I am a naturopathic doctor here, though I do work virtually. And a lot of where I work professionally, though, is bringing spirituality into medicine, but from that really big picture of saying, hey, I believe that your body is a metaphor for your life. Like, what if your symptoms, proverbially speaking, were actually talking to you more than, oh, this hurts, what can I do? Mm-hmm. So there's all these different symptoms and concerns and, things even just going through our head that, well, what if there's a deeper meaning? What else do I need to know? And then how can it better my life? I also have a very strong background in psychology, and then through my own life and my own awakenings, this has definitely been the transition from when I had specialized in weight and hormones to wait, how can we really get those long-term results? Yeah. And when we're looking at the long term, that's our life. That's our quality of life. So what do we then need to develop within ourselves to really continue that motivation and then even the confidence and intuition to change? So yes, I work on quite a number of fields there.
And I love that. One of the reasons why you and I connected was because of that, looking within yourself and wanting to develop yourself for the long haul. It's not, oh, I'm just going to focus on this for the next few weeks and then it'll fix everything. We're talking about long term. And I think people can relate to that. I think people who have struggled to make changes in their lives, whether it's personally or professionally, you realize you have to make the change for the long term. It's not a short-term fix.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've been talking, Jim and I have been talking this month about the Great Resignation.
Yes.
And one of the things that we've talked about was how oftentimes people will leave because of bad leadership, not necessarily because it's a bad organization, but because the leaders within there are not
bad leadership or a lack of leadership.
Yes.
Yeah, just none.
And when Dr. Serena and I we got together a couple weeks ago or so, we started talking and I realized you have this whole perspective about the healthcare industry, and you've worked within it for years, and you were bringing a new light for me as far as what some of the leadership is like there. And it isn't necessarily translating into what's best for patients. It isn't necessarily translating into what's best for people as a whole. Is that the case, Dr. Serena?
Yeah, so a lot of what I'm finding, and I remember, so before I came out here, I was actually practicing in New York City, my hometown, as I joke, a couple of people. I was practicing in New York City for about 6 years or so. And so even though, yes, I came out and everyone's, okay, choose a specialty. So my own passion was endocrinology and hormones. And I also have some of my own history in that department. But at the same time, way deep down and years before, when I found out about this medicine as a teenager, the first words out of my mouth were, "There's no magic pill." However, and I was thinking a lot about this too, it was like, but that's how people define themselves, which is by their symptom. So of course I had to choose a specialty for them people to feel comfortable enough to say, oh, I can identify with that. Okay, so that worked for a couple of years. However, a lot of my patients were these high performing, think New York City,
Mhm.
whether they were entrepreneurs, corporate, finance, just these very, they had a lot going on.
Mhm.
And the caveat was actually, for the most part, they were actually pretty healthy, or just healthier than even by conventional standards, so to speak. So, how could I even help? Okay, fine. We made a few tweaks to their diet. We did a lot of education around some really, high quality supplements, and then even getting back to very like nature cure and lifestyle,
Mhm.
even all those castor oil packs. And there's a tree and, right outside your window, like just step outside and touch that. That could be grounding too. Again, keeping it simple.
Mhm.
But that's what they needed. And
Yeah.
then their questions started becoming, why is this happening to me?
Mm.
Why can't I make these changes? But I tried all the cleanses. And I remember I even stopped running cleanses a few years in because everyone was coming to me saying, well, how can I make these changes long term?
Mm.
They were tired of the roller coaster, tired of almost feeling out of control, like they didn't really know their body, what to anticipate next. And sure enough, again, in my own life, I began experiencing, I believe, what I always knew deep down in my heart, in my soul. We are so much more than just our disease. We
Mhm.
are more than our concern. We are more than our ICD-10 code. But unfortunately, there's also this very like flow chart in a way of, okay, these symptoms, this code, this lab work, this drug is the typical. And I always say, like, well, with MDs, and I work with a number of them in New York too, they could be really nice. Like, they could be the nicest people.
Mhm.
However, how the system is set up, if you're also seeing like 50 to 80 patients a day, and these people too also went into this profession to heal, but
Yeah.
you're only getting like 5-10 minutes, it's going to be very draining. Their
Mhm.
patience is going to be drained. I almost did become an MD, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to be put through a whole system and come out by the time I'm super old at 30. I mean, but I was also 19 at the time, so there's a lot of life that happens in between.
Yeah.
But I just kept feeling like there had to be something else out there. Sure enough, that's what I could say. I found naturopathic medicine, but really, or did it find me?
Yeah.
So, in understanding that there's more than just what we see in the world, again, fast forward into these last number of years into practice, and where I really began getting people results with saying, hey, actually, if you're asking why, then isn't it the doctor who also does the research, asks
Mm.
these questions, because that's what science is too, is asking questions
Mhm.
to then continue to develop. Well, then we need to look for other reasons. So then that became, well, maybe let's look at the spiritual cause of disease. Let's look at chakras. Let's look at astrology. Literally, all these modalities and perspectives that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Why not? And that's where I began making certain linkages to, hey, if we can help people understand who they are and some of their blueprint, it's not about saying, oh, for example, oh, because of this astrology transit, I'm exactly like this. No, it's how can you use that to your advantage, and how can you use this knowledge to empower you? And
Uh, and just to jump in for just a second, I like how you talked about how, as the doctor, as the physician, you are working with your patient and you're doing the research, because that's what your background is in. It's in the research part. And you can relate to this because when it comes to finance, that's why you hire a financial advisor. That's
Mhm.
one of the reasons why you hire these professionals, is to help you do the research,
Right.
because the everyday person,
Or to do it for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
the everyday person doesn't necessarily know. So it makes perfect sense what you're talking about here, Dr. Serena.
Yeah. And on that note as well, is then it's also like, hey, of course, let's see whatever blood work, going from the physical, because we're still in this very dense physical body. But that's the thing. I've also seen people out stress, out mentalize, with even if it's just certain scripts going around and around. I've seen them out lifestyle supplements, medications, all of that. So it's like, wait, there's something going on. I'm going to say, I don't want to say like just psychologically, but when we do start questioning, it can bring up a lot of stuff, and it can bring up a bit of a shock. Like, but wait a second, I grew up and I was told this. Does that mean they're wrong? Well, not necessarily, because chances are the generation before was told that, and the generation before, add society into it. And at this point in this present time, we are dealing with a massive breakdown of beliefs. We should be questioning everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's so much to health and our well being. And then what we'll find is what we should believe or what we should do is really maybe what someone else told us, not always what we truly believe to be our truth and what we need for our body and our soul.
Then some of the books that you and I focus on,
Mhm.
As a Man Thinketh, The Science of Getting Rich, Think and Grow Rich, the underlying theme in those books is everything that what you think about is what you become.
Mhm.
And I have a feeling a lot of people who are out there searching for, like you said, that magic pill, searching for that thing that can fix them. The reality is they're fixated on what's wrong instead of fixating on what's right.
Right. And there is no magic pill. No, you make me think of this whole conversation makes me think of a physical that I had a few years ago after I had taken up obstacle course racing. That was my strange midlife hobby that I decided to take up, and I
Why not?
embarked. Why not? And I embarked on a program. I found a group to train with, and once I started in that process, I think I dropped about 35, 40 pounds.
You lost a lot of weight.
And got into very good shape. And when I had my physical, after going through that transformation, it was interesting because prior to that, I'd had a few medical issues, nothing severe, but some things that required medication, things like that. And what I found when I went for my physical is all of those problems were gone. And the doctor said something that I have never heard before. He said, you basically healed yourself by going through this process of transformation. And it's interesting because when people would ask me, hey, what did you do? How did you do that? And it's a pretty simple answer: diet and exercise. And of course, they always had this look on their face like, okay, what else you got?
Yeah.
But it
Well,
was pretty basic.
yeah, well, but what you hit on and what I heard was that it was also your consistency and the
Yes.
dedication to
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Because that's really it wasn't just, okay, you ate a piece of kale or you went to a few obstacle courses and you're like, okay, cool, where are my results?
Right.
It sounds like it was over that period of time that you were just in this zone. You
It
enjoyed
was.
it.
Yeah, it was about a 9-month stretch where it was consistent 3 days a week doing these hardcore workouts. And, certainly they were not workouts that were designed for a man my age, but I did them anyway. And as I, continued to go, the weight came off, the muscles started to develop, and I progressed. And you're right, it was very consistent. I was consistent about going to every training session.
And then COVID happened.
Yes, then COVID happened.
Now that you had a big change that happened to you during COVID.
I did. So right before that, it was interesting. Around summer 2019, I had really had a spiritual awakening. Really understanding, or kind of putting it in my mind, which is something I always sensed even way back, that there was more out there than just humans, than just this physical body, than just going around, whether pleasing other humans or just, seeing what's in this physical right in front of us. And yes, the stage had already been set over the past few years of things happening in my life, but it was in August. And I remember shortly before, there was someone who had said to me, make sure you have your patients take responsibility. And because there is that part, yes, in our profession, we are healers. That is we want to help. So of course we want to be there. But yet at what point do we also then say to the patient too, look, wait, if you're not taking this, no, I'm not going to shame you, but how can we help you take responsibility?
Right.
So I'll get to that in a second. So said awakening began the next 6 months of, holy crap, who am I? And what do you mean there's a soul and there's deeper meaning to our life? By the time I was ready to integrate myself back into the world, COVID hit.
Yeah.
So, and I was actually just recovering from it too, back in early March. So my parents called and they said, get down to Florida. And I was in the middle of Manhattan. I was seeing everyone with suitcases, every time I looked out the window. So shortly after, I drove down. So I stayed there for a couple of months. Then I stayed at their country house, which is in upstate New York, for the next few months. But that whole time, it was, yes, I would say COVID was sort of in the back of my head. But as that was happening, that was like a big bam, like that.
Right.
Everything on hold. In a way, the same thing was happening in my own life. I was realizing not just there's no magic pill, and that, oh my God, how am I going to talk about long-term health and taking responsibility in a society that's filled with marketing and just stuff that all it does is dole out magic pills,
right,
and tell people that with this one thing or this monthly subscription for the rest of their life, but don't you dare question it. I remember, or how many protocols. That's where I think too, should I do certain protocols in the future? It's going to be more open-ended questions. So then people can then, figure out their own. So then it's treatment then becomes this, okay, what would you like? We'll talk about all the, pros, cons, how it works with your life, all of that. But I was going through my own life breakdown. And what wound up becoming from that, which I believe you're referring to, is that I moved across the country to San Francisco, a long time dream that I didn't even know was still way deep down, because actually my dream school was UC Berkeley, and I've been coming out here since I was 11, and I always loved this city. But it was in a way that I felt like I just melted into it. And I always wanted to be bi-coastal. I knew my role as doctor. I mean, I have a whole press page on my website. So I was always, I'll practice, and then I'll speak, and then I'll write, and I'll meet people. All that stuff was going to feed me. And yeah, sure enough, I thought this was going to be maybe in another decade. But again, you have plans. The universe says,
Mhm.
well, actually,
No. It's now. Yeah, the universe has,
so
yeah,
I listened, and what's interesting is, and I'll say this is I've I've lived in all four corners of the country. I've studied abroad in Ecuador. I've traveled the world. I have no problem going off on my own, and in fact, that's probably more my default. And sometimes people say, "Wow, like, oh, you went to med school," or "Oh, wow, like you had all these achievements." I'm like, "Well, I don't know. It's from this. I enjoyed it, so I just saw it as like, why not?"
right.
Mhm.
I remember never having so many people say to me, "Wow, you're moving in the middle of COVID?
Mhm.
Aren't you afraid? Aren't you this? Aren't you that?" I was like, I don't, that's not even in my radar,
Mhm.
because right at in those moments, I had already maxed out New York. Energetically, I've met so many incredible people. I still keep in touch with a number of them, but energetically, I just couldn't be there.
Yeah.
And I was on to my next journey. And I remember, yeah, never having so many people say to me, "Wow, I could never do that." And I always remember thinking, but why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then,
I
yeah,
I think it's sad when that's your mentality.
Yeah.
That you're not open to all the possibilities, that you're not open to what could be. When you yourself box yourself in. It's not that other people have boxed yourself in, you have boxed yourself in. That's kind of sad.
Yeah, and that may be part of what's going on with the Great Resignation. Is there's a lot of people that are coming to that realization that they're not boxed in,
Yeah.
and that they can make some other decisions. They can move on
Mhm.
to bigger and better things. And I think that's one of the factors that
yeah,
may be contributing to all of this.
yeah. Well, and what's interesting is, so when I was in New York, I actually started my practice virtually.
Mm.
Because being there, especially first starting out, because so when I moved back, I figured, oh, it's my home, go big or go home. So I did both. And
Yeah.
why not, right? Like, I was only in school straight through from 2 to 27. So clearly starting my practice right in the middle of Manhattan, as my parents were helping me out. And my
Mhm.
dad was an entrepreneur, so I was inspired by that when I was like 8 years old. This was like the best idea ever. And everything was also going to happen in a snap.
Of
Mhm.
course.
Of course, right?
Of course.
However, in that moving back, was like, but wait, why would I also then put more, or choose to ask for more money for an office that I would probably just sit at, that would be the size of a closet? I
Yeah.
Mhm.
started already seeing the work from home paradigm shift. Yes,
Mhm.
eventually I did get office space, and and then same thing when the time was right, found a great MD to work with. But when patients realized that, wait, you mean I could just call you?
Yep.
Because even though I was centrally located, yeah, some were in other boroughs, some were like,
Mhm.
up towards the Bronx.
Mhm.
Time is money. Time
Yes.
is
Mhm.
energy.
Yes.
And if they had some time to chill, oh, they were taking it.
Yeah.
So there was already that shift happening.
Mhm.
So again, when COVID hit, I know there was that place of fear, but what I also saw was there was this breakdown in people's lives.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
saw homes being bought, people getting married,
Mhm.
all of a sudden these big career changes
Mhm. Yes.
that I believe too in the bigger picture. And even as I've kept that ear out for astrology, and just in general, like, oh, or astrology, that general energy.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
as above, so below. Here's a big change that happened. So then, what are big changes that's meant to take place in your life? Because
Mhm.
you are supported by that. You will be supported by that, with that intention and with that support. So, yeah.
Awesome.
All
Awesome.
right.
It has been wonderful
Yeah.
speaking with you. I'm so happy you could join us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Serena.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
If
you're welcome.
anybody wants to get in contact with you, what's the best way that they could contact you?
So the best way is my website, which
Okay.
is drserenagoldstein.com. I offer complimentary 20-minute phone calls, so you are more than welcome to book a phone call, see how I may be able to help. And there's also a contact form as well if if any questions come up and whatnot. So all my social media is there too. So yes,
Awesome.
website, everything is right there.
Good deal.
Okay, very good.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We got lots coming up.
Yes, we do. Oh my
Uh,
gosh, ton of things.
Today. By the way, if you're watching this live today, we've got our monthly webinar, monthly webinar that starts in about 45 minutes. It's New Year, New Goals. So that's on goal setting. And you can always sign up and get the recording for that. But the other thing is we got Live to Lead coming up next month.
Yes.
So Serena, the cool thing about Live to Lead this time around is it's hybrid. So
Yes.
so even if you're out there in California, you could actually
could
sign
jump
up
on
and
in. That is
do it
correct.
on Zoom.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
5 great speakers: John Maxwell, Jamie Kern Lima,
Mhm.
Valerie Burton, Jeff Henderson, and Ed Milet on there. So very motivational, very inspirational.
And us.
And us.
Yes.
So that's
Don't forget us.
Friday, February 11th from 10 to 3 Eastern time. People want to sign up for that, go to our website, ateagueofyourown.com, click on the Live to Lead tab, and you can do that.
Yes.
Other than that, we will see you next week. Jill Lublin is going to be joining us.
Oh, yeah, I know Jill.
You do know Jill.
I know Jill.
Jill is also a Polka Dot Powerhouse member. She's
she's awesome.
And we know her from the National Speakers Association.
Yes, we do.
Too. So Jill's going to be joining us next week. I'm sure she's going to talk a little bit about PR.
Probably.
Because that's what she
talks about.
So we'll be hearing from her. But thank you again, Dr. Serena. Great having you on the show. And we will see everybody next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.